Okay, Monday, 8th of December 2025. So, Adrian's daily vlog, sharing smart stuff men should know. The power of reframing. Now, a year or something ago, year and a half, I guess, 2 years, I was recommending a certain individual use a certain specific app in a sense of practice, in a sense of using it to study and understand more of a certain field, let's say. But the person was too caught up on the morals. He was mixing morals and mechanics too much. I did a video about this 2 or so years ago about mixing morality with mechanics and forces of nature. And fundamentally, gravity doesn't care. What would evolution say? These things, these forces of nature don't care. But that's a whole other conversation. Reframing is to look at the same thing but in different ways to understand it in a more positive or negative way, to understand it differently. So this particular app, he was too emotionally charged. His view was too emotionally charged, and he wasn't being agnostic or practical or down to earth about it, being too much emotionally invested in it and not seeing it as a tool. That's the key thing. He was seeing it too much from an emotional angle as opposed to, say, a laboratory or a field guide and a way to practice and a way to increase his social skills. Very interesting. And that's an interesting meta pattern and meta strategy at play in life. There's this thing out there, whatever it may be, and there could always be one way of looking at it, so the mainstream way. But then there could be the opposite way, say a dissident way of looking at it. Then there could be a more moralistic way of looking at it, or even a tactical, strategical way of looking at it. And each of these are valid, but just requires a little bit of creative thinking to understand the same thing from a different angle in order to extract what you want or need from it. Not in a deceptive way or selfish way, but to be tactical, to be strategical. This app, for example, could be seen as a way to practice and garner social skills from it. But because the person was looking at it, the exact same thing, two different points of view, moralistically, that was risking to hold him back. Because you could then say, right, well, the skills that could be garnered from here, he was not garnering anywhere else. And that could be critical. Because that then goes into epistemic lag, which I talked about, say, 6 or so months ago, where this is where you ought to be in your stage of life, for example, or just progress. People expect you to be, or society kind of wants you to be at this stage, but you're here. So this lag, this deficit, so to speak, compounds over time, and it gets harder and harder to catch up. Just how in the same way people would say about children, oh, he's quite tall for his age, he's quite smart for his age. It's that, but on a lifestyle, a lifespan age. Someone who's 20, you ought to be here, but they're actually there. Someone who's 30, you ought to be here, but they're actually there. That kind of stuff is relative to age and experience and culture and all the rest. But that, by looking at things from a wrong frame, you risk being left behind. Don't view this particular thing from a moralistic lens when you ought to be, ideally, to be seeing it objectively and as a tool for advancement in some fashion. Ooh, that's very, very deep, very, very interesting. So you could say, for example, the weather. Oh, it's not sunny outside. It's going to be a miserable day. Reframing it to say, right, well, instead of that, oh, it's not worth going outside. That's a chance to stay at home and work, for example. Very nice. Or it's sunny outside. I don't want to work. Why bother? Okay, it's a good chance to go out there and have nice memories and have a nice day out. Take pictures, memories, adventures, etc., etc. It's that. You could say it one way, it's making the most of something. Yes, very emphatically. But really, it's understanding how the same thing can be dissected in different ways to your advantage, irrespective. And this is the interesting thing: irrespective of morals. Because at a deeper level, and this is quite profound, some would argue that morals get in the way of advancement, of your own personal progress, or even, and this is interesting, even societal progress, in a sense of, here's this technology, here's this app that could really take your knowledge to the next level, or this technology to societal level to the next level, but morality gets in the way. That is very, 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 very controversial premise right there, but extremely valid. And this, and albeit anecdotal over here, is an embodiment of that. Meaning, I'm not going to use this app because it's immoral, which is a case to be made. But on the flip side, approaching as an engineer, you might say, I could learn a lot about human nature. I can learn a lot. I can strategize. I can improve my social skills. Or even Costa Discovery might say, who knows what this avenue might lead to in 6 months' time. You're denying yourself possibilities because of morality. Because of morality. That's very, very interesting, to say the least. And I mean that agnostically and in a binary way. This potential avenue is closed off because of it's immoral. No, it's full of degenerates. As opposed to looking at it as a tool. Very, very interesting. And thus, that epistemic lag over time gets worse and worse and worse. You're growing at, say, 1%, compounding annually, for example, CAGR, but you ought to be growing at, say, 5%. So when you're 40, you should be up here when actually you're down here. For example. Very dangerous, but worth understanding fundamentally. Very, very interesting to think about and strategize. But otherwise, Adrian's daily vlog, sharing smart stuff men should know. Subscribe for more, and you will see me tomorrow.